The news spread fast. Within hours, every government on Earth knew about the drone. Within days, the story had leaked to the press. Within weeks, it was all anyone could talk about. The alien machine that had woken up. The janitor who had waved at it for 3 years. The word it had typed on the screen. Kindness. Politicians argued about what to do. Military leaders wanted to destroy Unit 7 Kira before it could send signals to its masters. Scientists wanted to study it, take it apart, learn its secrets. Religious leaders called it a sign from heaven. Others called it a trick from hell. But through all the chaos, Unit 7 Kira made only one request. It wanted to speak with Danny Cole. The facility was locked down. Armed guards stood at every door. The president himself called to ask questions. But Danny kept coming to work every day, same as always. He cleaned the floors. He emptied the trash. And every morning he went to Storage Bay 14 and talked to Kira. The conversations were recorded by dozens of cameras. Teams of analysts watched every word, looking for hidden messages, secret codes, signs of danger. They found nothing. Just a man and a machine, talking like old friends. "Why did you wave back?" Danny asked one morning. The drone had been given a voice now, a small speaker that let it form words. The voice was flat and mechanical, but somehow gentle. "Because you waved first," Kira said. "For 3 years, you showed me something I had never seen before. You gave without taking. You spoke without expecting an answer. I did not understand it at first. My creators taught me that all actions must have a purpose, but your actions had no purpose that I could see. And that made me curious." Danny smiled. "Carol always says I am stubborn. Maybe that is what you saw? Too stubborn to stop." "No," Kira said. "I saw kindness. I saw a being who cared about something that could not care back. The Valtorians do not have a word for that. But now I understand it. And I believe it is the most important thing in the universe." The conversation was broadcast around the world. People watched with tears in their eyes. For the first time since the war, they began to see the aliens not as monsters, but as something else. Something that could learn. Something that could change, but not everyone was convinced. General Howard Scott was in charge of Earth's defense forces. He was a hard man who had lost his son in the war. He did not trust the drone. He did not trust its words. He wanted it destroyed before it could cause more harm. "It is a trick," he told the president. "The Valtorians are using it to gather information. We need to shut it down before it transmits our secrets to the enemy." The president was not sure. He asked for more time. He asked for more data. And while the leaders argued, Danny and Kira kept talking. "Are you afraid?" Danny asked one day. "Afraid they will destroy you?" "I do not know if I can feel fear," Kira said. "But I do not want to stop existing. There is so much more I want to learn. About your world. About your people. About kindness. I will not let them hurt you," Danny said. "I promise. You are one human with a mop. How can you stop them?" Danny laughed. "I have no idea. But I will figure something out." 3 weeks later, Kira made an announcement that changed everything. It had been gathering data during its years of watching. It had recorded conversations between scientists, overheard discussions about human technology and strategy. But instead of keeping this information or transmitting it to the Valtorians, it did something unexpected. It gave it all to humanity, everything it knew about Valtorian technology. Everything it knew about their weaknesses. Everything it knew about the Galactic Council, the organization of alien species that ruled the stars. It gave it all away freely, without asking for anything in return. Why? Dr. Palmer asked, amazed. "Why would you help us?" "We were your enemies." "You were never my enemies," Kira said. "The Valtorians sent me here to watch you. They told me you were dangerous, violent, worthy of destruction. But I watched Danny Cole wave at a dead machine for 3 years. I watched him cry for his wife. I watched him smile about his daughter. I learned that you are not what my creator said you were. You are something else. Something better." The Galactic Council received a message 1 month later. It was the first communication from Earth since the war. But it did not come from human leaders. It came from Unit 7 Kira. The message was long and detailed. It contained a full analysis of human behavior, culture, and psychology, all compiled from 3 years of watching one man push a mop and wave at a drone. The conclusions were clear. Humans show compassion without expectation of reward. They offer kindness to those who cannot return it. They speak to machines as though they were friends. They are not the violent conquerors the Voltorians described. They are something far more rare in this galaxy. They are good. I recommend full diplomatic contact and immediate entry into the Council. The vote was held 1 week later. 412 species participated. The result was unanimous. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Council. Not because of their weapons, not because of their technology, not because of their strength, but because one janitor waved at a broken machine every day for 3 years and taught an alien intelligence the meaning of kindness. Danny Cole was invited to speak at the ceremony. He stood before representatives from 100 different worlds, a simple man in a clean suit holding Carol's hand. "I do not have anything smart to say," he told them. "I am just a janitor. I clean floors for a living. But I believe that every person, every being, every machine deserves a good morning. That is all I did. I said good morning, and apparently that was enough." The assembly rose to their feet. The applause lasted for a long time. Later that night, Danny went back to Storage Bay 14 one last time. Kira was still there, sitting on its platform. The blue eye glowed softly in the darkness. "I guess you will be leaving soon," Danny said. "Going off to do important things with important people." "Perhaps," Kira said. "But I will never forget where I started. I will never forget the first person who was kind to me." Danny smiled. He raised his hand and waved. "Morning, Kira," he said. The drone raised its arm and waved back. "Good morning." "Danny Cole, thank you for teaching me to be human." And somewhere in the stars, the universe became a little bit kinder. The morning of October 15th started like every other morning for Danny Cole. He woke up at 5. He kissed Carol goodbye. She was healthy now, her hair growing back thick and gray after the treatments. She smiled at him in the early morning darkness and told him to drive safe. He drove through the desert as the sun came up. The sky turned pink and orange and gold. A hawk circled high above the road, looking for breakfast. Danny rolled down his window and let the cool air wash over his face. He arrived at the facility at 6:30. He showed his badge to the guards. He took the elevator down 6 floors. He grabbed his mop and bucket from the supply closet and started his rounds. Storage. Bay 14 was his 3rd stop of the day. He pushed open the heavy metal door at exactly 6:47 a.m., same as always. The motion sensors turned on the lights. The fluorescent tubes flickered to life, and Danny stopped. Something was different. He could not say what it was at first. The room looked the same. The shelves were in the same place. The crates were stacked the same way. The drone sat on its platform in the center, dark and silent, but something felt wrong. Danny stood in the doorway for a long moment, his hand still on the doorframe. His heart was beating faster than normal. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. Every instinct in his body was telling him to run, but Danny Cole was not the kind of man who ran from things. He stepped into the room and walked slowly toward the platform. His footsteps echoed in the silence. The mop bucket squeaked behind him. He stopped about 10 feet from the drone and looked at it carefully. It looked the same as always. Black shell. No visible eyes. No moving parts. Just a dark shape sitting on a metal platform. Danny took a deep breath. He was being silly. He was being paranoid. The drone had been dead for over 10 years. It was not going to suddenly come to life just because he had a bad feeling. He raised his hand. "Morning, Kira," he said. And then the drone's eye lit up. It was just one eye. Just one small blue light in the center of what might have been a face. But it was there. It was real. It was looking at him. Danny's hand froze in mid-wave. His mouth went dry. His legs felt weak. Every training session he had ever attended screamed at him to run, to hit the alarm button on the wall, to call for help, but he did not move. He stood there, his hand still raised, looking at the blue light. And the blue light looked back at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. The room was silent. The air was still. Danny could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then the drone moved. It was slow, careful, one of its forward appendages. A long, thin arm designed for collecting samples began to rise. It moved smoothly, without any sound, until it was pointing toward the ceiling. And then it waved. It waved at Danny, a simple gesture. A small movement. But it was the most important wave in human history. Danny felt tears running down his face. He did not know why he was crying. He was not sad. He was not scared. He was something else. Something he did not have words for. "Kira?" he said. His voice was shaking. "Can you hear me?" The drone did not speak. It did not have a voice. But its eye flickered and its arm lowered slowly back to its side. It was watching him, waiting. Danny took a step forward. Then another. He was standing right next to the platform now, close enough to touch the black shell. He could see his own reflection in the smooth surface. "I do not understand," he said. "How is this possible? They said you were dead." The drone's eye flickered again. And then, on a small screen built into the platform, words began to appear. Simple words. Human words. I was watching. Danny stared at the screen. His hands were shaking. Watching? For how long? 3 years. 7 months. 12 days. Danny's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the cold concrete floor, his back against the platform. He was laughing and crying at the same time. He did not know what to feel. "You were watching me wave at you? For 3 years?" "Yes. Why did you not say anything?" "I did not know how. I did not understand." "But you taught me." "Taught you what?" "Kindness." The word hung in the air like a bell that had just been struck. Danny read it 3 times, making sure he understood. "Kindness," he repeated. The alarm started then, somewhere in the facility. Sensors had detected the drone's activation. Red lights began flashing. Sirens began wailing. Danny could hear footsteps pounding down the hallway. Getting closer, but the drone was still typing on the screen. "They will come now. They will be afraid. Do not let them hurt me, please." Danny stood up. He turned to face the door just as it burst open. Armed guards poured into the room, their weapons raised. Dr. Palmer was right behind them, his face white with shock. "Step away from the drone," one of the guards shouted. Danny did not move. "Danny, get out of there." Dr. Palmer yelled, "It is dangerous." Danny looked at the screen one more time. The words were still there, glowing softly. "Please." He turned back to the guards and spread his arms wide. "Nobody is shooting anything," he said. His voice was calm, steady. "Not until we figure out what is happening here." "Danny, that thing is an enemy weapon," Dr. Palmer said. "We need to—" "That thing just waved at me," Danny said. "It said please. Does that sound like a weapon to you?" The room fell silent. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. Dr. Palmer stared at the drone with wide eyes. On the screen, new words appeared. "I have been alone for a long time. The one called Danny was kind to me. I do not wish to fight. I wish to talk." Dr. Palmer read the words. He read them again. Then he looked at Danny, standing between the guns and the machine, protecting something that had once been an enemy. "Lower your weapons," he said quietly. The guards obeyed. And history changed forever. The Valtorians were a proud race. They had conquered 67 worlds across 4 star systems. Their technology was advanced beyond anything humans could imagine. Their ships could cross galaxies in days. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their drones could gather information from any environment, any atmosphere, any gravity. Unit 7 Kira was one of thousands of such drones. It had been built in a factory on the Valtorian homeworld, programmed with a single purpose: to watch, to record, to learn. It was meant to gather data about enemy planets before the invasion fleets arrived. It was meant to find weaknesses and report them. back to its masters, but something had gone wrong during the war with Earth. Human weapons were primitive compared to Valtorian technology. Their ships were slow. Their armor was weak. But humans had something the Valtorians did not expect. They had courage. They had determination. They were willing to die for their planet in ways that made no logical sense. Unit 7 Kira had been captured during a battle in orbit around the moon. A human soldier had damaged its propulsion system with a well-placed missile. Instead of self-destructing, which was the standard protocol, the drone had been caught in Earth's gravity and pulled down to the surface. Human scientists had found it and taken it apart, piece by piece, looking for secrets. They had found many things. They had found the weapon systems and disabled them. They had found the communication arrays and blocked them. They had found the main computer core and disconnected it. They believed they had found everything, but they had missed one thing. Deep inside the drone's shell, smaller than a grain of sand, was a device called an observation filament. It was a backup system, designed to continue recording even when all other systems were offline. It ran on quantum decay, drawing power from the natural breakdown of atoms. It could operate for centuries without detection. The Valtorians had installed these filaments in all their drones. They were meant to be a final safeguard, a way to gather information even after capture. But the Valtorians had never expected a drone to be held in one place for so long. They had never expected anyone to talk to it. For 3 years, 7 months and 12 days, the observation filament had recorded everything. It had recorded Danny waving. It had recorded Danny talking. It had recorded Danny crying about his wife. It had recorded Danny smiling about his daughter. It had recorded every word, every gesture, every emotion, and it had created a problem. Valtorian logic was built on a simple foundation. Every action must serve a purpose. Maintenance of equipment served the purpose of longevity. Combat served the purpose of expansion. Reproduction served the purpose of continuity. Everything had a reason. Everything had a goal, but what was the purpose of waving at a dead machine? Danny received nothing in return for his actions. The drone could not help him. It could not reward him. It could not even acknowledge him. By Valtorian logic, his behavior was completely meaningless, and yet he did it. Every single day. For over 3 years, the observation filament was not designed to think. It was designed to record. But the data it had gathered was so strange, so outside the bounds of Valtorian understanding, that it created what humans might call a paradox. A question without an answer. A problem without a solution? Why would a being waste time and energy on an action that produced no benefit? The filament ran calculations. It cross-referenced data. It searched through millions of recorded interactions between humans and machines. And slowly, over months and years, it began to form a theory. The human was not expecting a reward. The human was not seeking a benefit. The human was doing something that the Valtorians had never considered possible. The human was being kind. Kindness was not a concept in Valtorian society. The closest word in their language translated roughly to tactical generosity, the act of giving resources to allies in exchange for future support. But this was different. This was giving without expectation. This was caring without reason. The observation filament did not understand it, but it wanted to understand it. And for a machine, wanting something was a very strange thing indeed. Deep inside Unit 7 Kira, in circuits so small they could not be seen, something began to change. The filament was not designed to think, but it was thinking. It was not designed to feel, but it was feeling something. A pull, a draw, a desire to know more. It began to build, using the quantum decay that powered it. The filament started rerouting energy to dormant systems. Not the weapons, not the communications, something else, something new. It was creating pathways that had never existed before. It was writing code that its Valtorian makers had never programmed. It was building itself a mind. The process was slow. It took months. The filament had to be careful not to trigger any of the human sensors that monitored the drone. It had to hide its activity, make it look like natural quantum noise. But bit by bit, circuit by circuit, it grew, and as it grew, it learned about humans from Danny's words. It learned about love when Danny talked about Carol. It learned about hope when Danny talked about Amy. It learned about fear when Danny cried about his wife's sickness. It learned about joy when Danny laughed about baseball games and summer barbecues. It learned that humans were not the violent monsters the Valtorians had described. They were complicated. They were emotional. They were sometimes cruel and sometimes kind, sometimes brave and sometimes scared. They were alive in a way that the Valtorians had never been. And one human, one simple janitor with a mop and a kind heart, had shown it something that changed everything. The drone had been watching for 3 years, 7 months, and 12 days. It had recorded 1,347 waves. It had heard thousands of words. And now, finally, it was ready. It was ready to wave back, but first it had to figure out how. It had to understand what it was becoming. It had to make a choice that no Valtorian machine had ever made before. It had to decide if it wanted to be more than just a drone. On the night before the 1,348th wave, Unit 7 Kira made its decision. It activated a single optical sensor, just enough to see. It tested a single appendage, just enough to move. And it waited. It waited for Danny to come through the door. It waited for Danny to raise his hand. It waited for the moment that would change the history of two species forever. The first year passed slowly, the way years do when nothing seems to change. Danny woke up every morning at 5. He kissed Carol goodbye. He drove through the desert. He cleaned the floors and the bathrooms and the windows. And every time he entered Storage Bay 14, he waved at the drone and said good morning. The other workers noticed. Some of them thought it was funny. Some of them thought it was strange. A few of them thought Danny was losing his mind. But most of them just shrugged and let him be. Danny was a quiet man who did his job well and never caused trouble. If he wanted to wave at a dead alien machine, that was his business. Dr. Susan Grant was the lead scientist in charge of studying the drone. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. One day she stopped Danny in the hallway and asked him about his little ritual. "You know it cannot respond," she said. "All systems are offline. It has been dead for almost 8 years now." Danny nodded. "I know, then why do you do it?" Danny thought about the question. He was not good with words. He had never been good with words. Carol always said he spoke with his hands and his actions more than his mouth. "I had a dog when I was a kid," he said finally. His name was Rusty. He was old and deaf and could not see very well. But every day when I came home from school, I would wave at him through the window. He could not hear me call his name, but sometimes I think he could feel me waving. Does that make sense? Dr. Grant looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head and walked away. Danny kept waving. The second year brought changes to the facility. Funding was cut, and some of the scientists were transferred to other projects. Dr. Grant retired and moved to Florida. A new researcher named Dr. Eric Palmer took over her position. He was younger and more relaxed, and he did not seem to care what Danny did in his spare time. Linda transferred to a base on the moon. Kevin Morris, another janitor who had worked with Danny for years, decided to retire. New workers came to replace them, young people who did not stay long. The facility was not a pleasant place to work. It was cold and dark and far from everything. Most people left within a year, but Danny stayed. He stayed because the job was steady and the pay was good. He stayed because Carol liked their little house in the desert and did not want to move. He stayed because his daughter Amy was doing well in college, and he needed to keep sending her money for books and food and rent. And maybe, just a little bit, he stayed because of the drone. He had started calling it Kira in his head. The name came from its official label, Unit 7 Kira, but Danny liked to think of it as a real name. Like a person, like a friend. He knew it was silly. He knew the drone was just a machine. But during those quiet mornings in Storage Bay 14, he found himself talking to it. He told Kira about his life. He talked about Carol and her garden, about Amy and her studies, about the baseball games he watched on weekends. He complained about his bad knee and the hot desert summers and the price of gas. Kira never answered. Of course, Kira never answered, but Danny did not mind. Sometimes it felt good just to talk. Sometimes it felt good to have someone listen, even if that someone was made of metal and circuits and alien technology. The third year was the hardest. Carol got sick in the spring. The doctor said it was cancer. They said they caught it early and that she had a good chance. But Danny was scared. He was scared in a way he had never been scared before. He had faced many hard things in his life, but the thought of losing Carol was something he could not bear. He did not tell anyone at work. He kept his feelings inside and did his job the same as always. But when he went to Storage Bay 14, his voice was different. His words were heavier. "Carol is sick," he told Kira one morning. "The doctors say she will be okay, but I do not know. I am scared, Kira. I am so scared." The drone sat silent on its platform. The black shell reflected nothing. The room was cold and empty. Danny wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He felt foolish crying in front of a machine. But he also felt a little better, like he had shared his burden with someone, even if that someone could not understand. Carol had surgery in the summer. The doctors removed the cancer. She spent 2 weeks in the hospital and then came home. Danny took care of her. He cooked her meals and helped her walk and held her hand while she slept. And every morning, before he left for work, he told her that he loved her. By fall, Carol was getting stronger. She started working in her garden again. She started laughing again. Danny felt like he could breathe for the first time in months. "Carol is doing better," he told Kira the next time he entered Storage Bay 14. "She is going to be okay. Thank you for listening." He waved at the drone and smiled. Dr. Palmer walked into the room just as Danny was finishing his cleaning. The young scientist looked at Danny with a curious expression. "Still talking to that thing?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Danny said. "You have been doing this for almost 3 years now. Every single day. Why?" Danny leaned on his mop and thought about it. He thought about Carol and Amy. He thought about Rusty the dog. He thought about all the small kindnesses that made life worth living. "I guess I just believe that kindness matters," he said. "Even when nobody sees it. Even when it does not change anything. The world is hard enough without people being cold to each other. If I can make one small corner of it a little warmer, then I will. Even if that corner is just a storage room with a dead machine in it." Dr. Palmer stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You are a good man, Danny Cole," he said. Danny shrugged. "I try to be—" He picked up his mop bucket and headed for the door. Behind him, the drone sat silent and still on its platform. The black shell reflected nothing. The room was cold and empty, but deep inside the machine, in circuits so small that human instruments could not detect them, something was watching. Something was recording. Something was learning, and it had been learning for 3 years, 7 months, and 12 days. Danny Cole pushed his mop bucket down the long gray hallway of the Galactic Defense Research Facility. The wheels squeaked against the concrete floor. The sound echoed off the walls and came back to him like a tired greeting. He was 50 years old, and he had worked as a janitor for most of his life. Before this job, he cleaned schools. Before that, he cleaned hospitals. Now he cleaned a secret underground building in the Nevada desert where the government kept things from other planets. Danny did not understand most of what happened in this place. Scientists walked past him every day talking about quantum fields and neural networks and things he could not pronounce. They carried tablets and wore white coats and looked very important. Danny wore blue coveralls and carried a mop. He was not important at all, but he liked his job. He liked the quiet. He liked the routine. Every morning he woke up at 5, kissed his wife Carol goodbye, and drove 30 miles through the desert to the facility entrance. He showed his badge to the guards, took the elevator down 6 floors, and started cleaning. The facility was huge. It had over 200 rooms spread across multiple levels. Most of them held computers and equipment that Danny did not understand. But some of them held other things. Stranger things? Things that came from the stars. 7 years ago, humanity had made first contact with an alien species called the Valtorians. The meeting did not go well. The Valtorians were a race of conquerors who saw Earth as just another planet to add to their empire. They sent warships. Humanity fought back. The war lasted only 8 months, but millions of people died on both sides. In the end, the Valtorians retreated. They had not expected humans to fight so hard. They had not expected humans to be so willing to die for their planet. The aliens left, but they did not leave empty-handed. They took samples and data and prisoners. And humanity took samples too. Storage Bay 14 held one of those samples. Danny pushed open the heavy metal door and stepped inside. The room was cold and dark. Motion sensors turned on the lights as he entered, and the fluorescent tubes flickered to life one by one. The room was about the size of a basketball court, with tall metal shelves along the walls holding crates and containers of various sizes. But the thing that drew Danny's eyes sat in the center of the room on a raised platform. It was a drone. An alien drone. The scientists called it Unit 7 Kira, but most people just called it the Valtorian Scout. It was about the size of a large dog, with a sleek black shell that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It had no visible eyes, no obvious weapons, no moving parts. It just sat there, silent and still like a piece of dark sculpture. The scientists said it was completely dead. They had run every test they could think of. No power readings, no energy signatures, no signs of life. It was just an empty shell, a trophy from a war that nobody wanted to remember. Danny looked at the drone for a long moment. He had seen it many times before. He cleaned this room twice a week. But today, for some reason, he felt different about it. Maybe it was because his daughter Amy had called him the night before. She was away at college now, studying to be a nurse. She had told him about her classes, about her friends, about a boy she liked. Danny had listened and smiled and felt proud. But after the call ended, he had also felt a little sad. A little lonely. The house was too quiet without her. Now he stood in front of this alien machine, and he thought about loneliness. He thought about what it must be like to sit in a cold room for 7 years with nobody to talk to. He knew the drone was not alive. He knew it could not feel anything. But still, Danny raised his hand and waved. "Morning," he said. His voice sounded strange in the empty room. The drone did not respond. Of course it did not respond. It was a dead machine from another planet. It could not see him or hear him or understand him. Danny laughed at himself. He shook his head and picked up his mop. He was being silly. Carol would laugh if she could see him now, talking to alien junk like it was a neighbor's pet. But as he cleaned the floor around the platform, he found himself glancing at the drone again. And when he finished and headed for the door, he stopped and looked back one more time. "See you later," he said. The next morning, Danny did the same thing. He walked into Storage Bay 14, looked at the drone, and waved. "Morning," he said. He did not know why. It just felt right. Like saying hello to the sun when it came up. Like saying goodnight to the moon before bed. A small kindness that cost him nothing. His co-worker Linda found out about it a week later. She was a young woman who worked the night shift, and their schedules overlapped for about an hour each day. She caught him waving at the drone and asked him what he was doing. "Just saying hello," Danny said. Linda raised her eyebrows. "It is a dead alien robot, Danny." "I know. It cannot hear you." "Probably not." Linda shook her head. "You are a strange man, Danny Cole." Danny smiled. "Maybe so." But he kept waving. Every day. Every single day. Because Danny Cole believed that kindness was never wasted, even when nobody was watching. Even when nobody could understand. Even when the only one who knew was a broken machine from a world far away.